Anthony Lambert. So we're really excited to have him speak on his story of transformation and how he's an entrepreneur, he's a real estate agent, and he's a philanthropist, and he is mentoring people in the youth, and he's going to use the same things that he has used to inspire them to inspire you guys today. So thank you so much, Anthony.
Yep, no problem. Yep, I'm Anthony Lambers. I grew up on the southeast side of Grand Rapids. Me and my friends call it the era. It was the crack era, which is really what's going to lead into my incarceration, where my story kind of takes off. In the mid-90s, teenager, kind of like Derek, really no place to live. Sofa surfing, I used to call it, bouncing friend's house to friend's house, just trying to find my footing. During that era, there was just a lot of kids running around with no fathers. And, you know, I was out in the streets and trying to find my way as a man and not really understanding the trap that was being set for us. I have a long story that could never get done in 6 or 7 minutes, but I'm kind of going to focus on the judicial system, the early times coming into prison, what I went through in prison, and then the grind I had to take when I got out of prison, which is what led me to entrepreneurship, because racist components in the employer world kept me from getting jobs that I should have been able to get. And it ended up forcing me into being an entrepreneur and a real estate agent, to where I could monitor myself, grow myself, and the only person who could hold me back was myself. Going into the prison system, one of the main things that I remember is every Tuesday and Thursday, I was in Ionia. It's 1997. I'm in Ionia, MTU, and it's a prison for the younger kids. So it was ages 18 to 25 was the heavy group. And I noticed within days that it was 90% Black. It was 5% white and 5% Hispanic. But the Black population was definitely the majority there. And every Tuesday and Thursday, they bring in the Grey Gooses and the buses that would drop off the kids. And I remember looking out of my cell and just watching kid after kid after kid coming into the prison system. It was an unbelievable time. And the sentencing guidelines, which, you know, I'll touch on a little bit later too, is the sentencing guidelines in the judicial system itself, to me, is racist. It's set up so that you can give someone 1 day in jail, or you can give somebody 25 years in jail for the same crime. And what that allows to happen is one group gets the long end of the longer end of the guideline, and the majority group usually gets the small end of the guideline. So for instance, as I came into the system with an armed robbery, and I got caught up with 5 people, and 5 of them were Caucasian. I was the only Black. And out of all of those, the only one to do any prison time was me. Everybody else went home. Nobody did a day in jail. I had no past criminal record or anything. We come up under the same guidelines, but they're allowed to go home to the parents. They were allowed to go home and continue their careers or education, whatever they needed to do. And I wasn't. You know, I was sentenced to a 5 to 15 and a 2 to 10. So at 18 years old, I'm looking at getting out of prison at 25. You have to think about, during those times, I'm amongst a lot of negativity, a lot of young Black males who didn't have dads in the first place, no education. I remember sitting at a card table and they had me keeping score because I was the only one that could do the math. And I just found that to be crazy. How are all these kids in here and I'm the only one that knows how to do math? And then I started to think, okay, well, there's got to be a link between education and being locked up. A lack of education, the doors for the jails open up. Also, what happened with our culture, sorry, I got somebody calling in. Also, at the time in that culture, it was prison became like stripes to the Black community. I hear it today. I hear people get out of prison, they bragging about being in prison, how much time they got. Oh, I respect this guy because he's got this much time. I'll tell you, I get more respect for the amount of time that I did in prison than I get for what I've done in the community with philanthropy and entrepreneurship. I get respect, but it's not near what I get from the Black community when I say, hey, I've been to prison, respect me. All of a sudden, the respect changes. And that's because I feel like we have allowed the prison system to be like the white man's military. When the white man goes to the military and he comes home, he gets the praise from his people. He gets free meals. He gets told over and over how good he is. He gets a ton of the discounts. People respect him. You're going to hear a lot of that this weekend. In the Black community, though, we don't have that. We have that in the prison. So when we come home from prison, the ones that listen to us, they listen to us because of those stripes, which is backwards and something that needs to be changed. The only way that we can change that is through mentorship, which I think about my time in prison, the difference from me to the others of why I've been able to come home and change my life around and lead by example and be a father figure to a lot of people. It's because I had a mentor who I met when I was 13, who followed me through my homelessness. He followed me through, I dropped out of school in the 11th grade. He walked with me as long as he could until I hit the system. And in the system, he sent me a newspaper, Grand Rapids Press, every day. One came to my cell. He sent me money so I could get food and the TV. He allowed his telephone to be open to me so I could call collect every single day. He never once said, don't call him. He's like, I'll pay the fees because I do not want you to be institutionalized. Institutionalized is a big thing because what happens when you go to prison is they strip you of your confidence, they strip you of your hope, they strip you of your self-esteem and your self-respect. And then they release us back into the community. And they say, well, when you come back to the community, we want you to be strong. We want you to do the right things, but you can't because you got felonies on your record. I always knew when I came home looking for jobs, and I did. When I came home, I was determined to be something. My mentor just kept telling me, you're going to be great, man. You're somebody, you have something to offer. When the rest of the world, I felt like I was thrown away. And I come home and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do everything I can do. I'm going to be patient. I'm not going to go the fast route. I'm going to try to get a job and do it all right. And I just couldn't get a job because there was this question on there, are you a felon? And I have to answer it. But really, do we really need that question now? Because what that does is it allows you to isolate out a group and say that, well, you have a felony, so we don't have to hire you. But you're not thinking about the recipe that we're stuck in poverty, lack of education. Most of us are gonna, 1 out of 3 of us go to prison. So, and I've thought about that. I'm biracial, so I have a big group of white friends and family. I have a big group of Black friends and family. On the white side, I don't know hardly anybody who's been to prison. And then if I go to the Black side, almost everybody's been to prison. Everybody caught in the sentencing guidelines. So being in there as a teenager and growing to adult, I think the first Black male figure that I met is in like a parenting role. His name was OZ. He was in prison with me and was like a father figure to me because I needed a Black father and didn't have one. I didn't have anybody to tell me how to hold my shoulders and come across with my demeanor and how to talk and to live and die for my beliefs. I didn't have that. I didn't get that until I got to prison. And between OZ and my mentor, I think there was a lot of positive that was put into me to allow me to be calm, be rational, and be under control when I came home to be able to be where I'm at today, which was a long ride. What I went through to get to where I'm at, it's almost, it would take weeks to explain the amount of racism that I met even to this day. I mean, I deal with racism right now today and the pitfalls and I told the story on Facebook the other day that, I worked really hard to get my first apartment when I got out of prison. It was a really big deal to me. I struggled with homelessness growing up. So to have my own place was like a major thing for me. And I finally got enough money for a deposit, and I convinced this apartment complex to let me in, and I was celebrating. I was there maybe a day or two. And then one day I got a knock on the door, and the lady who rented it to me said that I had to leave. And I said, well, why I got to leave? I gave you my money. What? She said, your parole officer showed up with the bylaws that go to this apartment complex. And in the bylaws, it states there should be no felons on the property. He wanted to let me know that you were a felon and you were on parole with him. And so I have to have you leave. And I thought to myself, what is the reasoning of that? So I come home, I do almost 7 years. I come back, change my life. I'm working hard. I ain't got a car. I'm walking to work every day. I went to go get the apartment before I got the house because I just want to know how to place to live. And I had my parole officer throw a wrench into that game so that I didn't have a place to stay. And I think, I remember meeting him when I went to my meeting with him and just asking him. And he said, because I want to see if you're poised enough to handle these hurdles. Those are nonsense hurdles. Those are racism hurdles. What you really wanted me to do was turn back to my anger and all my unhappiness and make bad decisions that would land me back in prison, which is a revolving door. When I got paroled out with maybe 25 guys and only 4 of us are still free because they go back into the system. Now you have to take that and think about all those men that are in those prisons. 75% of them, I'm guessing, have kids. So now you have all these kids growing up without that black figure that I didn't get into prison. And the moms and the grandmas are doing everything they can do, but there's just some things that only a black male can teach a black male. And without the dads being there, you're setting them up for failure. And they end up on that Grey Goose and coming in Ionia on a Tuesday and Thursday. And then they just become slaves and make your license plates and build your chairs and your office furniture for 75 cents a day. And then they flop you and they don't let you get parole. They won't tell you why they're not giving you parole. They just won't give you parole. And it's just a constant vicious cycle. And, I think that if we want to change anything within our culture, it's got to start with mentorship. And earlier, Derek was talking about it. It's like, as far as being a mentor, like, it doesn't even have to be that title. You can just be a good person to someone else and share your stories and share your ideas and let people know that you care about them. Like, we have to care about each other. There's a slave mentality amongst us, and we make it. And when we make it, run and go away. I don't want to go back to the hood. I don't want to see that anymore. I've already lived that. I'm not coming back. But we have to reverse that, and we have to go back. And the Boys and Girls Clubs are great places, but there's other places you can do that too. You can do it by picking up a phone and just checking in with a team. If I look in my messenger on my Facebook, 90% of it are teenagers that are just reaching out to talk. Very rarely do they ask me for money. Very rarely do they ask me for rides. A lot of times they just say, hey man, what would you do right now?
Right.
We want to change anything. It's got to be with the youth, and how we nurture the youth and care for the youth is going to dictate where we're at from here. Because at the end of the day, the white people, they don't have to stop being racist. They can continue to do that. And we have to find better ways of dealing with that. And I know I'm probably up on time for real because I can go. But one real quick thing that I would like to say is, right now in America, whether it's genuine or not, they are allowing us opportunities. They are allowing the doors to be open right now. People are getting awards that they normally wouldn't get. They're getting their applications looked at when they normally wouldn't. Their ideas are being heard, whether it's genuine or not, because there's a lot out there who are not genuine about Black prosperity. But some of them are following it just because it's a look and it's marketable and it's a beautiful thing to say when everybody says, Black Lives Matter. We all say it together. It sounds great, right? So right now, though, is the time for the Black culture to strike and make moves and take every advantage of everything that's happening now. Yeah. So that's a little bit of my story.
Thanks,
that's what,
yep. And I know that we went a little bit long on time, but I just want to make sure that you know that we literally have over 200. This is really meaningful.
Yeah. So I'll just say, in regards to the city, state, and federal government, as far as them speaking out or not speaking out, for me, if you don't speak out right now, I already know where you stand. And they're in leadership positions. So what that tells me is we need to just lead ourselves. We need our own street leaders. I'm not going to follow waiting for a state or a city to say anything anymore. You know what's right. You know what's wrong. And when you don't respond, you're worried about yourself. And if you're worried about yourself, you ain't worried about anybody else. And we need everybody to love and care about everybody else. And it's a shame that we have leaders in leadership positions that are actually very scared to speak out on real things. So I think it is mentorship. Let's lead ourselves. We don't need to wait for this. They're not giving us any. We just now getting to this point. It's 2020. I'm 44 years old and I haven't seen equality or civility yet. So to think that they're going to do anything for us, they're just getting really good paychecks and living comfortable lives with a great title. The rest of us got to get in the mud and mentor our kids and bring our kids up and teach them. We got to fight the prison systems. We got to fight all the inequality. It's up to us to do it. And it's education and it's getting us out of poverty. And we can do it. We don't need anybody else. We can do it. That's all I got.
Thank you, Anthony.
So good.